Nearly a quarter of a century ago, Al-Qaeda carried out the deadliest terrorist attack in modern global history. America is still coping with that event, psychically, politically, culturally. Terrorism remains an ongoing threat across the world, and experts warn it is an escalating threat in parts of the world. The Global Terrorism Index 2024 report determined there were 3,350 terrorist incidents in 2023 alone. It also found that the number of deaths caused by terrorism increased by 22% compared to the year before. Turning to this year, U.S. Central Command says ISIS, you might remember ISIS, claimed 153 attacks across both Iraq and Syria between January and June. Officials warned back in July ISIS was on pace to more than double the total number of attacks it claimed in 2023. Colin P. joins me now. He is the Director of Research at the Soufan Group. His research focuses on domestic and transnational terrorism, international security, and geopolitics. Colin, it's great to see you. Talk to my audience about two things. One, is ISIS back in a way that we should be more worried about it than the headlines would suggest? And even if it's back, is it anywhere near the strength it was when it was such an irritant in the Obama administration?
Well, the Islamic State isn't back because it never went away. In fact, it's ebbed and flowed in strength over time. The United States and the coalition of allies that it led to defeat the Islamic State was successful in revoking a lot of the physical territory that ISIS once held. But the center of gravity has now shifted from Iraq and Syria and the Levant down to parts of sub-Saharan Africa and even back to South Asia, with the regrowth of Islamic State Khorasan province, responsible for a number of global terrorist attacks this year, as well as several foil plots in Europe.
And what should policymakers in the United States or Europe be doing about this that they are not yet doing?
Well, we need to continue to invest resources in counterterrorism. There's been a shift in the Beltway, attention moving away from counterterrorism towards what we call great power competition, dealing with a rising China, a revanchist Russia, and a regional threat in Iran and its various proxy groups. We can't take our eye off of the Islamic State, off of Al-Qaeda, off of what's happening in ungoverned spaces and fragile states throughout the world. If we do so, we'll live to regret it. It's the same situation in the lead up to 9/11/2001, where we thought these groups were contained, that we thought that they were more of a nuisance than anything, and they turned out to be a very pernicious global threat, as we learned that fateful day 23 years ago.
Those of us who covered that fateful day and remember all of the assessments made after the fact came across a phrase that I saw in a recent Max Boot column in the Washington Post, that the lights are blinking red now. It was said pre-9/11 the lights were blinking red. We just didn't see them. Why can't we see them now?
Well, we should see them now. And if you remember back to that time around 9/11, we were told by government officials and policymakers that this would be a long war. And it still is a long war. Our adversaries are committed to the war, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, and their various affiliates worldwide. We need to remain committed to combating terrorism in all of its forms and manifestations, not just transnational terrorism, but domestic terrorism and what's happening here on the home front.
Is it possible, Colin, to summarize cleanly ISIS's either territorial, financial, or ideological goals?
In short, the Islamic State seeks to dominate the territory where it operates, but it also wants to conquer. It wants to build a modern-day caliphate where it converts non-Muslims to Muslims, and those that refuse to convert are slaughtered. Thankfully, we're never going to be back to a place where ISIS is able to control large swaths of territory in the heart of the Middle East as it did several years ago. It once controlled territory the size of Great Britain. The United States is not going to allow that to happen, but at the same time, there's other parts of the world, the Sahel and parts of West Africa, parts of South and Central Asia that are now becoming terrorist havens once again. And this is going to come back to bite the United States if we don't remain on the offense.